Hello dear friends, I am Andrey Khovratov. Today we continue our show, The Secrets of Millionaires. And our guest for today is a very famous public figure in one of the markets, Oleg Ivanov. Oleg, please introduce yourself. Tell us what it is that you do and in what market you operate. Thank you very much for the invitation, Andrey. Yes, my name is Oleg Ivanov and I'm the founder of two projects, CryptoBazar and CB Capital Fund. In short, we are probably the most prominent player in the blockchain market in the Russian-speaking area, both in terms of hosting different events, offline and online conferences, hackathons for developers, and in investing, as a fund, in a great deal of companies. Since early 2017, we've invested in more than 40 projects, mainly international, in Asia, a lot of projects in America, and a few in the Middle East and Europe. We will mainly talk about the crypto market, and the first question to which everyone wants to know the answer is, what's an STO, an ICO, and what is the principal difference? Well, this is quite a relevant question in 2019. In a nutshell, one needs to understand where it all came from. Overall, if we forget for a moment about blockchain, the STO and ICO model itself is a crowdfunding model, when companies raise investments from a large number of investors. Only, instead of receiving liquid assets, Bitcoin, Ethereum and such, investors get a token, which they can do something with. Every project outlines in its documents how that token can be used. So the original model, which was called ICO, Initial Coin Offering, worked in such a way that any company could put up a website, drive traffic to it, and talk their target audience into throwing some money in. This led to the appearance of very interesting and large companies, but at the same time brought about a lot of scams. When some obscure companies using some incomprehensibly written and sometimes even copied papers raised considerable money, millions and tens of millions of dollars, and then vanished. Eventually, everyone got more or less fed up with it, and in mid-2018, the entire ICO market dwindled away. Then a trend started when cryptocurrency exchanges such as Binance, Huobi, OKX, those who are familiar with the subject matter must have heard about them, began themselves picking up quality projects and taking them to the exchange, similarly to IPOs in the Nasdaq or the New York Stock Exchange. Obviously, they have their own intricacies and difficulties. This is one area. The second area of focus is called STO, Security Token Offering. All tokens are divided into security and utility tokens. The main difference is that a security token should necessarily be accompanied by legal documents and approved by certain regulators in any given country. In this regard, any STO token for an investor is essentially a more secure option because it is backed by something, by a company, or it has to follow legislation of a given country. Or speaking in geographical terms, more often it is in the United States, Switzerland, Singapore, or similar countries that appear in that form. Again, there are intricacies there too, which should be discussed in more detail. Understood. So security token offering is something regulated, and as far as I know, you need to go through the SEC procedure, the Security and Exchange Commission. A good question. It depends on what kind of investors the company wants to attract. So, if the company wants to go to the American market and attract American investors, then the SEC is unavoidable. But if you take the American residents out of the equation, you don't need clearance by the SEC. There are a lot of crypto projects and STO projects. Often you just need to receive the approval in Switzerland and Singapore, for example, depending on what countries or what bigger geographies the project plans to attract.
или в какие географии более широкие, да, проекты планирует для себя привлечь.
Then I have a follow-up question. What is the success rate for STO and ICO projects if you go back to 2015, 2016? Percentage-wise, ICO and STO. Objectively, it is a very difficult question. It is difficult because the data have varying degrees of transparency. The ICO market, maybe because it was the first to appear, was a phenomenon. They wrote a lot about it. There were many aggregators that showed what kind of projects had been in preparation, what projects had been about to be launched, who had collected how much. Everything was in blockchain, so you could see the amounts raised. As for the STO market, it is unfortunately more under the counter, let's say. So there is fragmented information about the actual number of companies about to launch their tokens, or going through the clearance process, or doing something else with them. Most websites that you can come across will give you very patchy information. We are aware of a couple of dozen projects, tops. With the American Blockstack being the best known one. Earlier this year, after dealing for half a year with the SEC and spending millions of dollars, Blockstack received Reg A or Reg C clearance, which allows them to conduct an STO. Essentially, they are an STO project, but the tokens have not yet been accrued. So the story is not over yet, and everyone is keeping an eye on it. Whereas companies in the real sector of economy, or companies with tangible assets, when trying to tokenize their business, usually do it with one of the two models. They either do it through a loyalty program, which turns into a crypto token with its internal mechanics and ecosystem, or with the second model, issue a structured note, a derivative, which also has to receive clearance at first, and only then a token can be issued. These are the two main roads that are usually taken. On the face of it, if we compare both models, then due to its history, better transparency, there are thousands of ICO projects. In 2017 and 18 only, there were around 4,000 or 5,000 projects that we know of that can be easily found. And there were only several dozen of the STO projects. Dozens? Not thousands? Yes, yes. Has the popularity of STO decreased or increased? This is quite a wide topic for discussion, and it is actively talked about at conferences. There are two sides to it. On the one hand, there are a lot of expectations because everyone understands that the real sector of economy needs to have elements of blockchain and crypto assets incorporated into their business models. In this way or another, taking into consideration that they are legitimate players, therefore they should stick with the law. So everyone understands that a great deal of funds will flow in from their own economy when STOs start working to the full extent. The main problem with STO, if compared to an ICO project, which is quite apparent, is the heavy regulation, which means that the cost of launching an STO is higher than an ICO. Secondly, there is very clear geographic distribution, clear distinction between those whom we work with and those whom we don't. Even after the primary preparation and analysis, there are always risks in the secondary market. For example, an investor from Iran sells his token to an investor from the US. Let's not even mention North Korea. We all understand that it's going to be a huge problem for such companies. The elements of regulation plus the technical aspects of it represent an issue yet to be solved. Many companies are dealing with it. And thirdly, and most importantly, tokens, as a rule, are devised to create a secondary market of liquidity.
придумывает для чего? Для того, чтобы создавать некий вторичный рынок ликвидности, да, так называемый.
In layman's terms, people who have them in their phones should be able, in 2 clicks, to transfer them to someone else, or exchange them to rubles, dollars, or other currencies, or simply sell them, exchange them to something they are used to having in their wallets, like an internet bank. You need liquidity for that, and liquidity is provided by the exchange. And the main problem with the STO here is that the main liquidity is in the centralized crypto exchanges, such as we mentioned before: Binance, Huobi, OKX, BitMEX, Liquid, and many others. Well, not that many, the top 10. And their main problem is that they try to keep out of the regulation field in order not to expose their entire business to the risks associated with the regulators, such as in the US, Switzerland, and others. And they do it by choosing crypto assets they will list and they will allow to trade on their exchanges, and for which they will not bear any legal consequences. STOs are at odds here. Essentially, as soon as one single token is listed in any such exchange, it will create a whole lot of trouble for them, up to the closing down of their entire business. And the existing platforms are trying to gradually gain momentum. They have great expectations, but at the moment, the whole thing won't take off. The next question is whether STO tokens are traded after STO is completed. As you correctly put it, it's liquidity. So where are they traded afterwards? Is there a market for them at all, or is there not? Well, technically, there is a market. There are platforms such as Swarm, Polymath, and others. But again, the main problem is, which trade in STO tokens? Yes, they list them. They list, but it is not the secondary market. They list in order to trade. And when you go to those platforms, which by the way are publicly accessible, you can see the volume of trading, the liquidity, the spread, all of those standard indicators. But it's like night and day. It's like comparing a spaceship with a tricycle. The difference is enormous. Unfortunately, at the moment, the market is still in its infancy. So even if a company goes for STO, the chances that there will be lots of trading in the secondary market are slim. Based on the experience gained so far, unfortunately, yes. I cannot name one single renowned solid STO project which would have the level of liquidity, the volume of trading and so on par with at least Echelon 3 or Echelon 4 projects. Not the top ones, Echelon 3 or 4, which are traded in Binance and Huobi. Not even close, sadly. Understood. Thank you for your extended answer. What would be your forecast for ICO and STO in the short term? Forecasting the crypto markets is a thankless job. For instance, yesterday the exchange rate of Bitcoin was $7-something thousand. Now it's less than 7,000. It's quite volatile. Firstly, there's this technology called a distributed ledger. And it's not a silver bullet, we know that. But there are certain objective benefits which both businesses and individuals can get for themselves from that technology. For starters, so it has the right to exist. Secondly, there are a lot of projects that at the moment are trying to address technological issues. Because one of the two main problems restraining growth of this sector lies in technological limitations. We all know, and everyone says, that the protocols are slow, expensive, very difficult to upscale, etc. For example, if we take our phones, which we have everything in them, payment systems, flashlights, email, social media, etc., and compare them with the first computers, which operated on punch cards, I'm sure many people still remember them. Now imagine in those times, when computers were as big as this room and operated on punch cards, someone would invent Facebook. Unreal. Yeah, so what? Machines wouldn't be able to handle it. With the protocols, the situation is roughly the same at the moment. Protocols cannot cope with the tasks of large businesses. Therefore, the first battle is being waged on the new gen protocols, where we as a fund are investing the most. Because we know that's where the future Google or Amazon will appear, which will become an industry standard. There is no need for many of them. This is one task, and limitation two, because it's escalating. The second limitation is that of legal nature. There is a clear understanding that regulators in different countries naturally are and will be creating clear-cut rules for the game for large or at least medium businesses to follow. We talked with different airlines, I won't mention their names, in Russia and overseas, and we all know that they have a standard thing, such as miles for each flight, a loyalty program and such. Why not create a secondary market for it, convert it into crypto assets? The degree of regulatory risks for them from this action versus the benefits is incomparable. They are already launching pilots. It has been in place for a long time now. There is no legal basis though? There isn't. Nobody's doing a massive rollout because everyone's waiting for the second part. Sooner or later, both solutions will be there. The question is, when? And the last question, is there sense conducting an STO, and if so, why? I would avoid giving a definite reply, or rather advice, because first, I would proceed from the company's tasks, whether the task is to attract investors' funds, and whether there are alternative sources, and what is cheaper, more expensive, more profitable, less profitable, whether there are legal risks versus other benefits. It's where it's better to go case by case. And secondly, why do you need to do it? Let's say that you have an audience and you want to offer them a more beneficial model of internal relations involving points, loyalty programs, and so on. It is used very often. And here, I would not necessarily call it and go for an STO, because there is a fine line. When technically, you can call it an STO, but in fact it will be implemented through other tools, and will not hit liquidity so hard, which you still need, after all, as a secondary tool. So most certainly, companies will go for it more and more every year. Most probably, it will be a hybrid mechanism instead of a straightforward STO. And that is what is most exciting, to create something on the borderline, something working within the legal field while taking the best from both worlds. What is your advice for our viewers, for those investors who are just starting to work in the crypto market as an experienced investor in the field? Friends, I guess I should first learn what kind of information you provide your audience with. But nevertheless, I think one of the main rules is to exercise caution. And instead of trying to make profit, focus on not losing your money. Therefore, use caution. Gather intelligence first. Double check with the companies you're going to work with. And even if you're going to take risks, don't go all in. Use only what you are prepared to lose. But at the same time, gain experience and understand that your next steps will be taken knowingly. So first and foremost, use caution.
Следующими шагами там что-то получить уже в опытном ключе получается. Поэтому прежде всего, конечно, осторожность.
Thank you very much, Oleg, for sparing your time. Thank you, Andrey.